Welcome to the first assignment for Color and Tech. Today we're going to be learning about color. We're going to be learning about CMYK versus RGB and learning the difference between the two. We're also going to be defining color sets. We'll be defining primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. At the end, we'll be building a color wheel. So let's just jump right in. So let's start off by talking about CMYK and RGB color. CMYK and RGB both have their own uses and their own applications, and we'll cover all that in this section. But let's just start off with the simple stuff. What does CMYK stand for? Well, the C stands for cyan, the M stands for magenta, the Y stands for yellow, and the K stands for black. Obviously, you're probably asking yourself, why does K stand for black? Well, it's easy. Blue and black both start with a B. So to avoid any confusion, they just said, okay, let's go with K to represent black. Then we have RGB color, and RGB has its own uses, and we'll cover that in this section also. But as you probably already know, R stands for red, G stands for green, blue is the B, and then you have white. Okay, so now we're getting into the differences. So CMYK is a subtractive color. Subtractive color is basically when these colors overlap, they become darker. So say if you have a magazine and you put it under a loupe, as we called them, or you can call it a microscope or magnifying glass, and you look real close, you're just going to see thousands of dots that are going to be made up of these colors. And the more these colors overlap, the darker they get. So if you took cyan, magenta, and yellow and you put these exactly over each other, you're just going to get black. So on the other hand, RGB is an additive color. You're going to see this as a digital application. So whenever you add and overlap these colors, they get brighter and become white if they're laid together completely over each other. So why do they have these two different variations of color? Well, CMYK is used for print applications. So anything printed on paper, magazines, posters, newspapers, even t-shirts, basically anything printed all day long, every day, is going to be standard CMYK. That is the print standard. Then we have RGB. Well, RGB is used in digital platforms. So RGB is going to be used for anything you may see on your computer monitor, your TV, your phone, anything that's digital, you're going to lay it out all the time in RGB. So those are the two differences in these and what applications they're used for. So in the next section, I'll give you an example of how this works. Earlier we talked about how CMYK was a subtractive color and RGB was an additive color. And I described how that worked, but I thought this would be a good way to actually show it in use. So let's start with the CMYK side. So I made my cyan, my magenta, my yellow. Well, these are just your normal colors. There's no overlays or anything done to it, as you can see. But now if you take these, say I pick my magenta, and then I go to my transparency, and I go to my multiply mode, you'll see it begin, and I'll just go around, multiply. As they overlap, they get darker and darker until they go to black. Pretty cool, right? So that's just a great way to show how subtractive color works. Now let's flip over and let's go to the RGB. And RGB again is an additive color. So this time I have my red, my green, and my blue. No overlays, just solid color. So now if we take that and take the red and go to screen, you'll see everything start getting brighter. Green, I'll make that the screen, make the blue the screen, and bam, as they overlap, everything goes brighter till you get to white. By the way, I use multiply and screen blending modes as an example here only to show how additive and subtractive colors produce white and black. This is not a way that you're going to mix your colors in future projects. So now that we've discussed CMYK and RGB color, their different uses, the different applications they're used for, CMYK being for print, RGB being for digital, I wanted to step back and let's talk about how we set up our documents. So when we're working on our documents, we know that our colors are correct, because even in software, colors matter. So if I go and set up my new file, so file and set up here, you'll see RGB or CMYK. This is where you pick your color space. So then you'll hit create. I'm not going to hit create because I've already created this document. I wanted to show you. I actually did 2 documents. I did 1 and 2. You'll see this one is made in CMYK, and you'll see this one is made in RGB. This is where you can see what color space you're in. So I'm going to stay with this one I did in CMYK. I want to show you here in my color palettes. I want to make sure we're going to make sure that if we're in CMYK here, that we're going to be mixing our palettes in CMYK. The same as RGB. RGB document is set up. I mixed these colors in RGB. I can show you that by, say, the red. And by the way, RGB is set up numerically from 0 to 255 to make their colors. So you'll see 100% red is 255, blue 255, green 255. You'll see in my CMYK document, let me switch back over to CMYK because this is my CMYK document. You will see that the yellow, 100% yellow, and so on. You know, my cyan, since that's our blue in CMYK, so it's 100% cyan. So when we use CMYK and we said that was for print, you do not get the vivid colors that you would see on a monitor or your phone. That's why us as graphic designers will use calibration software so we can actually bring down the vividness of the colors so that we can better see how they're going to look when they're printed on paper. So I wanted to just show you how important it is to stay in the right color space. So I'm going to copy this. That was my CMYK document. I'm going to take it over here to the RGB that I made. I'm going to paste in place. I kind of lined these up before when I was making this prior. So when I paste in place, they're going to line up. So there you can see the huge difference between RGB color and CMYK color. I mean, look at your red, look at your green. You can get much more vivid color out of RGB. And you'll see in CMYK that it's totally different. So I'll be looking for this throughout the term because I'm going to have you guys making documents and you may be in different color modes, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to check that if your document is made in CMYK, that you used your CMYK palette over here to mix your colors. So these are just examples, but please, when we're making our projects, just make sure that we're staying either in CMYK or RGB, and that means through the document setup and through the palette and how you mix your colors. All right, guys, on to the next section. Okay, guys, now we have covered everything about CMYK and RGB color. We've gone over how to set your documents up and use the correct palettes depending on which color mode you're in within your software. So now we're going to get to the actual project for this week. And before we get to that, we're going to just do a quick recap on the color wheel basics. We're going to go through our 3 color sets. So our first set is our primary colors, which you probably all may already know. Those will be yellow, red, and blue. Those are our primary colors. And from those 3 colors, we can make any color we want. All right. From there, we have what you call secondary colors. So I'm going to show you that we have our yellow, red, and blue as in our primaries. But here, you will mix the primaries together to create your secondaries. Yellow and red, orange. Red and blue is violet. And blue and yellow is green. Okay, so those are our secondary color mixtures. From there, we have our tertiary colors. We have our primary colors and our secondary colors. What we do is we start mixing our primary and secondary colors. We're going to start off here. You're going to have yellow and orange. Then you're going to have a red-orange. It's going to be orange and red mixed together. So then you're going to have a red-violet. Then you're going to have a blue-violet. It's where you're mixing your violet and your blue to make the blue-violet. Then you'll have the blue mixed with the green, which makes blue-green. And then you'll have your yellow-green, obviously. So that is our tertiary colors and how they're mixed and how they relate on the color wheel. So with that being said, the next step was our final project, which is we're going to actually make the color wheel. All right, here's the project, guys. We're going to make a 12 shade color wheel. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to make our page. We're going to make our page 11 by 17 in a landscape orientation. I'm creating mine in CMYK. You'll have the option to do yours in RGB if you want, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. But for now, I'm going to use CMYK for mine. All right, so here's our artboard. What we're going to have to do first is find our polar grid tool. And you may not see that. That's because it's hidden under the line tool here. If you hold and press, you'll see the polar grid tool right in there. All right, so what you're going to do now is just going to click on the page, and we're going to do this 6 inches by 6 inches, and we're going to have the dividers set at 12. Don't worry about this. This can stay at 2. So 6 inches in diameter and 12 for the radial dividers. Okay. All right, there we go. So first thing I want to do is I want to show you, let's go ahead and fill this with a color, whatever color you want. Picking green for mine. So you'll notice here that this is just a shape. You can't really pick any of the pie pieces here. So what we need to do is get that where we can colorize these. So with our black arrow tool, we're going to select the polar grid, and we're going to increase the stroke here. And for this project, I want us to set the stroke to 10. All right, there's that. Once we get that done, we're going to go up and we're going to make outlines of our strokes. So go to Object, you're going to get a path, and you're going to outline stroke. All right. So from here, we're going to need to use the Pathfinder. And I've got mine up here, but I'll close it out. If you don't have your Pathfinder open, you can find that under Window, Pathfinder. All right. So with the black arrow tool again, select, and right down here, you're going to see Divide. So just press Divide. And nothing really happened, did it? Well, it kind of did. You can see now, you can select all those pie pieces. So this is a pretty cool tool here. We're going to take our magic wand tool right here. And what you're going to do is you're just going to hover over the stroke right there. Well, it's not a stroke anymore because we made it a shape. But what we're going to do is select that and hit delete, and voila, there we go. So now we've got our pie pieces and we've got negative space in between. So now we need to get rid of some of these. So let's take our white arrow tool and we can just start deleting these. Going around and around. Now here I can just drag and get rid of those. All right, so there's the start of our color wheel. So I'm gonna make a copy of this. So Command C, Command V. Here we go with that. And let's put a stroke around this. Like stroke. Let's make our stroke weight 4. Okay, now let's scale this guy down. And I'm gonna scale this down smaller and you'll see why later in the video. So let's scale it down. Oh, what's going on there? What's up with that stroke? See how it's changing size? Well, I've got a great way to fix that, so let's undo that. So this is a little hidden gem in Illustrator, but if you go up here to Illustrator and you go to Settings, go to General. If you look right over here under General, you'll see Scale, Strokes, and Effects. So check that box right there and hit OK. Now you'll see what this does. Now when you shrink it down, look at that. Everything just stays perfect. So for now, we're just going to set that over to the side. I'll change these to white while I'm at it. Okay. So now we can start working on our color for the color wheel. First thing, let's do, you see how the line is right here in the middle? Well, we want this to be in the middle, so we're gonna get right there until we see our rotation. We're gonna hold our shift key down and we're gonna pull over to, it flips right there to the right, rotate it to the right. Actually, I didn't do that with this one either, so let me do that one. Here we go. All right, now everything looks good and lined up there. Now let's start making our color. So this top one is going to be our yellow. So CMYK, 100% yellow. And this is going to be our primaries. We're going to have primary, our red primary, which is 100 magenta, 100 yellow. Our blue is a little bit different in CMYK, but this is how we're going to achieve it for now. That's cyan. Obviously in CMYK, that's 100%. If we want to get a nice little blue color, just type in 50 here. And that gives just a middle ground blue. All right, from there, we're going to make our secondaries. Here, here, and here. So we will have, first, we're going to make an orange. So orange, 100% yellow, 50% magenta. We'll make a violet. So to make a violet, we're going to make 100 in the cyan, 100 in magenta. And actually, it's a little bit dark. And if you remember earlier, we talked about how CMYK is subtractive. So if we want to make that a little bit lighter, we would just make that one 90 for the cyan and 90 for the magenta, and it'll brighten it up just a little bit. Then over here, we're going to make our green. So 100% yellow, 100% cyan, and there we go with our green. Okay, now we're going to make the tertiary colors. It's a hard one to say. So this one is going to be our yellow-orange because we're in between orange and yellow here. So Let's go ahead and make our orange. We'll just make it orange so we can see. 50% is our orange. So what we want to do is half that. So we're going to bring that down to 25. And there's our yellow orange. 100 yellow, 25 magenta. So now we're going to make our red orange. Let's just go ahead and make this red. Let's take the cyan out of that. And we're going to keep the yellow at 100. And to bring that halfway down, we'll make that 75. All right, going on down the line, we're going to make our red violet. So if you remember, we had 90 set on that. So let's make that 90. Take the yellow out. So we've got 90 cyan, 90 magenta. So what we want to do is we want this to be a little more red in hue. So let's take this down to say 75. Actually, let's see what 50 does. That's probably pretty good right there. So now we'll make our blue violet. And on the mixture for that, 100 cyan, 50 magenta. So we want to make this more to the blue. So actually I'll just take that. Let me just eyedrop that so I'll have to remix it. Select that again. So what we want to do is put magenta in it. And I think I'll go about 75 with it. Somewhere around there. Just type it in. Okay, so there's our blue violet. Then what we're going to have next is our blue green. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to select that. I'm going to eyedrop it. And let's make our blue green. So what we're going to do is bring that down to 50. And then we're going to make our yellow green. I'll select that again there. That just gives us the same green to work off of. And let's bring the cyan down to 50. All right, I think that's got that part of it. So I just wanted to go back while we're in CMYK, and if you remember, I made my color wheel in CMYK. I wanted to go back and discuss the blue. So if you remember, I created my mid-ground blue here by my mixture of 100% cyan and 50% magenta. Well, blue is a little funky in how you can use it in CMYK because, as you know, our blue in CMYK is 100% cyan. So that's what I had made here versus having this blue. This is our 100% cyan. And we have our violet here. And what this is going to do is it's just going to give us a little more range of color to work with between these three. So this violet, if you remember, I had made 90 and 90 just to get a little bit brighter of a violet because, as you remember, subtractive color would make it darker the more we add. So that is why I made this 90 and 90. Well, now what we can do is have a little more room to play with here for our blue violet. So now I can take my 90 in my cyan and let's make it 75 to match this. See, now you can see we have a better blue violet to look at. And I just wanted to show you this. You're more than welcome to build it like this if you want to. I just wanted to kind of go over and show you how this works and the different ways you can make your blues and how this one can give you more range between your blues and your violet. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that before we went to our next section. So now that we've built our color wheel, and remember again, I used CMYK to build mine. we're going to take this, we're going to jump over into the world of RGB, and we'll see the differences that that's going to make. So what I'm doing is I'm copying my CMYK color wheel that I made, and I am bringing it over to an RGB document. And you can see that here. And again, under color mode, you can see it here. We're in RGB. And we're in our RGB sliders. So I copied my color wheel, and I'm going to do a paste in place. That's a very handy tool to have, and I had set this up before where that would work to fit my copy here. But this is my CMYK color wheel. And if you remember, we talked about how color was important even in software. So we're in an RGB document, and I've pasted CMYK inside this document. Well, if you see here, if I swap back over to CMYK, and this is our CMYK mixtures, see how this is off, the yellow is. It doesn't work right because it's got blue in it. And you have to do that to get it back to yellow. And it's going to be the same with your red. You see how much the red is off here in CMYK? Well, that's because we're in an RGB color space. So that is why we need to really be careful about making sure that we're mixing our colors in the right color modes. What I want to do is I want to option, and that's going to make a copy. If I option and shift key over, it makes a copy of that one, and I'm holding my shift key down just so everything stays nice and tidy. All right, so what we're doing now is we're going to make this in RGB, and you'll see, like we showed earlier, how much different RGB looks than CMYK. So for my yellow, I'm going to go to RGB, and in RGB, red and green at 100% make yellow, 255R, 255G. That's our primary yellow. Then we can go to our primary red. To make this in the RGB red, we're going to take out everything and just have red, which is 255. Our blue, we're going to mix, and look at that vibrant blue we have there. So that's our 255 blue. Then we're going to make our secondary colors. So our secondary colors are going to be orange, and that's going to be 255 red. And you'll see that I'm finding the halfway point here is at 127. So our green, we're going to set to 127, and that's going to get us halfway with the green. And for the blue, we're going to bring it down to 0, and that's going to give us a nice vibrant orange. So now we're going to go down to our violet, and we're going to find our halfway point in our red, which is 127, halfway. We're going to have 0 in our green, because we don't want any green. And we're going to find the midway point of our blue, which is 127. And this will be our violet color. Okay, so we'll make our green. So that's another easy one to do because it's just 100% green. And now we're going to work on our yellow orange. So I kind of have these here to help us. So 1/3 was going to be 85, 2/3 would be 170, and halfway would be 127. So to start with, on our yellow orange, we're going to make our red at 255. We will make our green at 170. And that's going to put us about 1/3 of the way. And then for our blue, we'll make this 0. So that gives us a nice little yellow orange. So we're going to come over here to our red orange, and we're going to have 255 for our red, and we're going to make our green 85. And we're going to take out the blue. So that's just going to give us about a third of the way to make 85 and our full-on 255, and that's what's going to make our red-orange. So we can get down here and let's go to the red-violet. For the red-violet, we're going to have our red set at 170, which again is our 2/3 point. And we're going to have our green set at 0. And we're going to put in 127 for our blue, which is going to get us directly in the middle because half of 255 is 127. All right, so now we're going to go over to the blue violet. The blue violet is going to have 85 in the red, which you remember is a third. And we're going to have 0 for our green, and we're going to have 170 for our blue. Okay, so that gives us our blue violet. All right, so now we're going to go work on our blue green. So our blue green, we're going to keep it 0, and we're going to find a 2/3 point here. And that is going to be 170 for the green. And that's going to be about 2/3 of the way. Then we're going to have 127, which is the halfway point for our blue. So we have 2/3 at 170 and halfway is at 127. And that's going to give us our blue green. So the last one we got to make is our yellow green. So our yellow green is going to be 170. That's going to give us about 2/3 of the way in our red. We're going to have 255 for our green, and we're going to bring our blue all the way down. So that leaves us with a nice bright lime green color, and that's again about 2/3 of the way here, and then 100% is 255 on the green. So that is how you can make your color wheel in RGB, and you can see a huge difference in the way those colors look. And always remember, if we go back to our CMYK, our mixtures are all just kind of all over the place and not how we would normally mix our colors. So anyway, I thought that was a good example just to show you guys the difference in CMYK and RGB and how to mix your colors in CMYK and RGB. All right, guys, let's go on to the next section. Wow, I know that was a lot of information, guys, but let's get ready to wrap this project up. So now we're back to our color wheel that we made. We have our colors in the color wheel. I had you all make this little guy earlier, and I'll show you why now, and we'll make this quick. So we're going to make and show our primary colors. So our primary colors will be yellow. This will be our red. And this will be our blue. I'm going to go with this blue I made, which is 50. Okay, the reason why I'm showing you that because this is what's going to be our final project, and this is what I want it to look like. I want you guys to make your page 11x17 CMYK or RGB, however you guys decide to do it. We're going to put a title on there. We're going to put our color wheel on there. I want you guys to use the little junior color wheels to make your primaries, secondaries, and tertiary colors. Then I want you guys to label everything accordingly, just like this. And let's connect these triangles in here. Why not? That'll be something extra we could put in to kind of help us direct our eye around where everything is on the color wheel. And I also want you guys to, you can see how I did mine here. You can do yours in the bottom left, right. I just kind of center mine and put it below, but I want you to write your name, the week, and the project that we're working on the page. And I will go ahead and tell you guys one of my biggest pet peeves that I am totally obsessed about. I think it's very important as graphic designers that we do this on anything that we work on, and I'll be looking for it throughout the term on every project we do. Look to see if everything is centered, that everything is aligned, everything is spaced out evenly. Say for these three, I did my alignment distribution tool to make these even across. Make sure you use your shift keys when you're rotating things around so they stay at 45-degree angles. So all those things I'll be really checking out to make sure you're taking the time to do. And if you don't, there will be points taken off. And if there's a lot that need to be taken off, I will, because if I see things, and group this. So if I see this over here and this here, and this is kind of like this, and this is more like this, this is what I absolutely hate. So please remember, please make your documents clean, make everything aligned, and make everything the way it needs to be as a professional. All right, guys. So I know that was a lot. That was a long one. The other ones won't be quite as long as this, but there was a lot of information to cover, and I think we learned a lot. So that being said, y'all have fun and good luck.